Edit audio.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robin Hopkins, and this is Well Adjusting, where I talk to people about life stuff, but not in an NPR way. It's more like we're at the bar, having cocktails, getting into your business sort of way.
It's giving drunk NPR.
Oh, and producer Steph is here too.
Hello.
Today we chat, well, how to stop giving unsolicited advice. Friends, have I got a treat for you. Okay, today, my newest pal, LoGrasso, who you might already know because she's the host of the podcast Unleash Your Inner Creative. Also, she was an expert of the day on a previous Well Adjusting episode, so you want to go back and listen to that, of course. Now, today she's here to talk about advice giving. Well, more specifically, how to stop giving advice when no one asked you to butt in and give your opinion. Now, for those of you who know me or who have listened to even, I don't know, let's say 35 seconds of a Well Adjusting episode, you could probably guess that I struggle a bit with this topic as well. So this conversation, it is just so fun. It's filled with two gabbers trying to see if we can help each other stop offering opinions. You see the irony in us giving advice on not giving advice? Let's just overlook that and keep the train rolling. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Lauren. I am a podcast host and producer, singer-songwriter, public speaker, and creative coach. And I'm from Detroit, Michigan, 100% Italian, and I've been in LA for 13 years. I just got engaged.
She sure did. Saw that on the social. I was like, woo!
Yeah. Those are a few fun facts.
Okay. All right. And what are we discussing today? What issue's been coming up for you that you want to kind of pick apart?
So something I've really realized about myself, Robin, is that I give a decent amount of unsolicited advice.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I was just helping. But apparently, unsolicited advice, when not asked for, advice is just criticism.
Yeah.
And so I've recently learned this, and I'm having to deal with how to not do that anymore.
Okay.
Or lessen it at least.
I love this discussion. I recently heard a guy talking about, and he was an expert tennis player, and he said, I never, ever, ever give advice. He said, even sometimes if asked, he said, because I have discovered that no good comes from it. And I thought, oh shit, that's like next level. Because I spent my 20s and 30s just like giving advice to everyone. And I thought if I made them cry, I really did something good there. Like I was like, boy, did I help. So I get this.
I know. I feel the same way. So what do you think that is in us?
Well, that was going to be my question to you, because I think I discovered what it was for me, which was, I think I thought, much like you, I was helping. But the reality is what I discovered is that I'm very uncomfortable when other people are in distress. And I'm a fixer. And so what I do is I come in and I'm like, okay, so here's what we could do. We could get this, we can get that, and we get this. And it's like, I think that I realized somewhere along the way that I was self-soothing myself as much as I was offering help. And I also realized that many times people just want to vent. And I was trying to make it all go away.
Right. Or even maybe that they would like your advice at some point, but first they need to get out everything they feel. And you're actually like cutting them off from sharing their full feelings by interjecting, being like, I know how to fix this. And maybe you do, but like, it's really not your place to say until you're invited.
Yes, but that's very difficult. And so I want to ask you, why do you think you do it?
So I think something similar to what you said, but also I think it's a self-worth thing. I grew up in this environment. I love my parents to pieces, but I was like their pseudo marriage counselor all throughout my childhood. So literally when I was 8, they decided they were going to go to counseling. And I said, you don't need a counselor. I'll be your counselor.
Are you serious at 8?
At 8. So, and I will say, like, as a child, I had a decent amount of wisdom to me, and they really listened to me. So I kind of learned that my role in love was to like be that support system and guide. And so when I fell in love with my fiance and he didn't want my unsolicited advice, it was like a real slap in the face to me. But then I realized like, oh, he just loves me for me. Like I don't have to like provide something. I can just be myself. And so I realize in these situations where I'm like trying to get in and be the coach, yes, there's a part of me that feels uncomfortable. There's also a part of me that's trying to earn worth that way.
Like you have to bring value to the conversation.
Yeah.
Like what would happen if you don't provide? What do you like? What's the thing you make it mean if you don't provide?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like if I'm not bringing value in some way, like what am I even doing there? You know, like I'm there to enrich people's lives. Like I should be providing some sort of value. But what I'm trying to get to, and the way I'm trying to rewire my brain is like, it's enough just to be yourself.
Yeah.
And it's also pretty arrogant to think like you know what's right for somebody else's life at all times.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
especially when you're not doing it for yourself.
Yeah. No, there's definitely like I can see something that I think you can't see. Right. And by the way, like that gives us the like, you know, kind of like the audacity to like do these kinds of podcasts, being like, you know, like I don't have a single credential. Who the fuck am I out here being like this? Well, what happened with your mom? You know, so it's like there is a little bit of like that comes with it and finding that line.
Yeah, that's true. And I do think that probably there is a natural skill set in both of us to see from above for other people. Yeah, I will be clear.
Certainly easier on other people.
Yeah, so much easier because you're not attached to whatever their circumstances most of the time. But it doesn't mean that we should. And also, like, have you ever heard of human design?
No.
So it's this interesting modality. It's kind of similar to astrology, but basically it purports that we all have like a certain design, like energetic design that we were born to live out. And my design is called a projector. Like that's the energy type I am. And the strategy for a projector is literally wait for the invitation. So by giving people this advice and telling them what they should do without being asked or invited, at least energetically, I'm literally, according to the system, going against my design. And that resonates. And like what got me thinking about it was like some of the healing I've done around codependency and then this human design thing, because they said like when you give out your energy without being asked, it exhausts you.
Oh my God, it does.
And you don't feel like seen and you don't feel like you're really like whole. You're depleted after that. Yeah. So I'm like, well, I don't want to be depleted. And I also don't want to give people something that they don't want.
That's the big key is like, is someone ready for a conversation? Like if you think about like coming out, right? They always say that if someone's outed, it does so much more damage to them because they weren't ready. So you create trauma. So it's like, it's almost like that. If someone's not ready to have a conversation about their mom and I'm all like coming at them, that could do more damage. I think that's something that's the real responsibility of it has sat with me for the last bunch of years.
Yeah. So how have you been working on biting your tongue when you feel you're seeing something very clearly that could help someone?
I mean, I don't know actively what I'm doing. I think I'm just trying to move myself out of situations and say things like, well, that's their journey. Like, it's like...
You're like, you don't really believe it, though.
I don't. But I feel like with strangers and acquaintances, I've just made a shift and I just do it a lot less. But where I find it really difficult is with close friends and family, because it's like I find that to be incredibly hard. Like I can see you hitting your head against a wall and I love you and I don't want you to continue. And, you know, I think like my poor wife would be like, yeah, you could give me a lot less advice. What are you doing to try to bridge the change?
So one thing I've learned, the first thing I learned was you can ask first. You can say, do you want my advice? Which is a great question to ask as a beginner, as someone in recovery from unsolicited advice.
I have 5 days without giving advice.
Yeah, that was my first step. And then the thing I do now is like I wait longer than I think I should to ask that question. So the other day, my fiance was venting about something and I thought it was going to take like, hopefully he won't listen to this. I thought it was going to take like 2 minutes, but he wanted to vent for like 10 minutes. So I let him kind of like exhaust himself venting. And then I said, that all makes sense. I hear you. I'm sorry you're going through that. It's so hard. Do you want my advice? And he said, yeah, actually, I feel like I got everything out that I wanted to, and I'd love to hear what you think.
That's so good. I do have a friend who started saying to me, and she was the first friend who ever did it, who started saying, well, what do you want from me right now? Do you want advice or do you just want me to listen? And I was like floored by her asking that. And I loved it so much because it really did give me, because there's nothing worse than when someone's giving advice and you really just want to vent and you feel like you have to bat away. No, it's not that. It's like that's a bad feeling. And it freed me up from that. And I really did love that. So I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, like that's what's working with the people who are closest to me, except for my parents. I'm still struggling with that because like they kind of welcome it. But I'm also like, I don't really want this to be our dynamic for the rest of my life.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. If that was your dynamic when you were so young, how do you shift that with them? If to a certain extent, there's a whole, well, tell your mother that, like that kind of vibe.
Yeah. So I first made them aware that what happened when I was younger wasn't healthy for me. And that me being in the middle of their issues actually was like damaging and not great. And they were great parents, but this was just like, this was one of the big things. In a way, it's beautiful because they saw my wisdom, but in another way, it was like that burden never should have been on a kid that young.
Yeah.
And so when it kind of starts going in that direction, I'm like, hey, I don't want to get in the middle of this. You guys can work it out amongst yourselves.
Yeah.
I believe in you.
I believe in you.
I'm like, I can't do this. I love you both. But sometimes I still do play that part of like, it's not as much advice, but like United Nations. I'm like, what mom really meant was this. What dad really meant was that. Because I'm an only child. I don't know if I've told you that. So I don't know. I think that one's still working out. It's tricky. We're thinking about doing family therapy, which would be beautiful.
Wow, that'd be amazing. Yeah. What about situations where you have people in your life who repeat, this is going to sound really harsh, but repeat the same mistakes? By the way, just full disclosure, I repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again. But like when you're watching,
one hit wonder, baby.
Yeah, how are you attempting to address, like, does it build up for you when you see a person just being like, you're doing it again, this boyfriend is mean to you? Like, what do you do with that?
I'm really like still asking, do you want my advice? And I still listen a lot. I think if someone was doing such a repetitive mistake over and over and over and over again, and it was truly like hurting their lives and they didn't care, I think at some point I would have to distance myself from them, because it depends what it is. If the mistake is like you buy the same, I don't know, like trinket 15 times by accident because you forgot you had it, like that's fine. I can live with that. But if it's like you're bringing like negative people into your life and then being like, well, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? I think if at some point you couldn't recognize it or didn't care, I probably would need to distance myself, because at some point that energy is going to hit me and affect me. And I can still love you, but probably not be as close to you as I was. And I will say, like, most of my friends, my close friends, are on some sort of healing journey.
Yeah.
So I don't see that happening as much. Like anyone who was in that pattern usually gets therapy, or at least can like acknowledge it.
Yeah.
I think self-awareness also goes a long way.
Yeah. I think we could say that about the world in general. I have noticed like there's a point in life where some people are working on themselves and some are not. And it's hard to be a person who really works on yourself and be with people who don't, especially if you're an advice giver.
Oh my gosh, Robin, can I tell you something I realized recently?
Yes, please.
When you're constantly working on yourself, you can outgrow people really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's been happening to me lately, where I'm like, oh, wow, like that relationship no longer serves me. That business partnership really doesn't make sense anymore. Like, and it's not that I don't care for or love these people. I just realized like, oh, I don't really have that kinship with you that I once did. And that's okay. And so that's something that's been interesting in my life too, as I've been doing this healing work, especially over the last 2 years, is how quickly we can evolve out of certain relationships.
Well, you know what's interesting is like, as you're saying that, because I think it's so true, it's so valid. But as you're saying that, I think there might also be a component too of sometimes of like, I'm sharing this because I don't want to outgrow you. Like I did this self-help workshop called, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud because everyone's going to be like, dude, you went to a cult. But there was a lot of like lovely information in it about, looking at your patterns and behaviors and stuff. But then it was like, what's that like Amway? Like it's like,
Oh, multi-level marketing?
yeah. It's like, thank you. It's like an MLM. They have like phone banks for you to call people. But they really, at the end, sort of scared you. And what they were saying wasn't untrue. They were like, if people in your life don't have this language, don't have this way of being, you won't be able to continue these relationships. And so I don't necessarily think that that's untrue. Like the relationships may shift, but I do think that like it panicked the crap out of me. Like I remember calling my mom and being like, you have to be healed. You have to be fixed. If you don't, like, I just don't even understand how we'll be able to have a relationship. And that did not go well, Lauren. It did not.
No, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. And I also understand where you were coming from in that moment. They probably used like, when you were talking about it, it reminded me of a chain letter, and they're like, pass this on or else you will die. But the problem is with any extreme thinking, it's usually based in a grain of truth. And so it can scare you just enough into believing it. But yeah, like the cool thing is when you do have the right people in your life, they eventually come around. Like I was in therapy for 4 years before my mom started and like 7 before my dad did.
Yeah.
Now, like maybe you're not going to like wait that long with like a random friend that you see once or twice a year, or maybe it doesn't matter to you with them. But like with the primary people in your life, I do believe like osmosis or something happens where they just eventually are curious enough. And if they love you enough and you love them enough, they're going to want to evolve with you.
Well, sometimes they see the change in you. Like I've done a million of these like self-helpy workshops. So I did this one and it was not at all like that. They were just like, now go out into your life. And like a year after I did it, my friend said like, something is really different about you. What is it? And I was like, I did this thing and I told her about it and she did it. And then like a whole host of people around me did it. And it was like really transformative for a lot of people, but it was like because they saw something different.
Right.
I feel like I'm stepping into cult territory here. I just sound like I've been in some cults, don't I?
No, because you've never gotten fully immersed. I think you've gotten a taste of a cult, but you've never had the full buffet. Yeah, no, I think that that's true. Like, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because you weren't going around to anybody, going back to our unsolicited advice, you weren't going around to anybody being like, you have to try this thing. This thing will change your life. Or maybe you were you?
I was not. That's the thing.
See?
That's the thing. I could say it's the one time in my life where I just trusted the thing and people wanted to do it, which I think is really interesting.
So that's, I think, the takeaway for both of us is that if we can really focus on just being ourselves and focus on our own growth, then we don't need to go around influencing people. Like, they will be, if they're in our circle and love us or think we are wise in some way, they will be naturally inclined to find this thing or like do whatever it is that has been helping you or make some sort of change in their own time, in their own way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great takeaway, that without forcing anyone, just by talking about your own experience and your own healing journey, so many people were able to go on this healing journey.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be yourself.
I know. Well, that's why I think that underneath the unsolicited advice is fear, because it's not a logical behavior to do that when people aren't asking, when people may seem uncomfortable or reject it, but yet I might still keep doing it. So it's like that. That's why I really believe it's got to be fear-based or some kind of like a large, like deep-seated thing. That's why I'm fascinated by the, like, you saying what's your worth or what's your value without it. Because I mean, you're like this lovely person who has so much to add that it's like the idea that you would even, that would be a thought is crazy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I just think, I don't know, for me in particular, just growing up that way, I was always told, were you ever told like you were a wise child or like you were?
I was told I was an obnoxious child, but
I just remember being like, you're so wise for your age. And I'm like, I'm going to be really sad when people are like, you seem like the right wisdom for the right age. I feel like I'm getting there now. I don't know. It It's something I'm still definitely working through, and I still really struggle with it. I'm not like to the other side by any means, but I think the thing I'm just doing right now is letting myself feel uncomfortable with just listening
Ugh.
and like being okay in the stillness instead of the constant movement. Like my go-to to quell my anxiety is to constantly move.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be okay with just calming my nervous system a little
Yeah.
bit and just being.
Yeah, because sometimes the movement isn't like it's not literal movement. Sometimes the movement is for me is like, okay, and so what you're going to do is this, and then this, and then after this, and then we'll get you here. Da, 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 like that kind of emotional movement of like just because I want it to go away for you.
Right.
I mean, it's like
Right.
coming from I think it's coming from a loving place, but it is. I think people don't recognize it's also coming from a place that's not it doesn't have anything to do with the other person.
Yeah, I've heard some other people say like this kind of behavior basically is you're using other people. Now, I think that this is a little extreme and not taking any nuance into account, but like you're using other people as your drug. Like you're using them to calm your own nervous system. And I think there is some level of truth to that. There is a level of like, I want to be helpful. I see
Yeah.
how things could go better. I love you. But there is also a level of, okay, I feel uncomfortable right now with your pain. So I'm going to make myself feel comfortable by telling you exactly what you need to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're working on sitting in that uncomfortableness. And I feel like I may be working on that in this life. And if there are other lives, probably 3 more. So
Yeah.
I'm curious like what you're doing around that.
So I have 2 therapists right now.
There we
Because
go.
why not? One of them does this thing called IFS. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
It's really cool. So it's called Internal Family Systems. And I'm not going to explain it super well. So you listener, please look it up on your own. It's super interesting. The guy that invented it, his name is Dick Schwartz. He's written a book about it. But basically, it's the idea that inside of us, we all have these parts. And these parts have stepped up to protect us from certain situations that they feared that we couldn't handle. But there is a higher self. There's a capital S self that is calm, confident, that should be sitting at the head of the table of your life and your decision making. But unfortunately, these parts that kind of like separated from that self in order to protect younger versions of us have thought that they are the ones in charge and end up making these weird decisions for us. And so what this work does is you basically get in touch with these parts, listen to what they want for you, and tell them that they don't have to be at the head of the table. They can have a seat at the table, but they don't get to be making these choices for you.
Yeah.
It sounds wild, crazy, far out. I will tell you, after I do a session of this, I'm like, I feel different. I'm like, why do I feel different? This is so weird. And I'm like, oh, I did IFS earlier this week.
Yeah.
And so it's been really, really life-changing to get in touch with my anger. That's something I had really repressed.
Yeah.
To get in touch with this part of me that really wants to have all the answers and help people and figure it out and like serve. To get in touch with like parts of me that are resentful and bitter. Like it's been a real game changer, and I would highly recommend it for anyone going through anything, really.
Yeah.
I also do EMDR through that same therapist. Not as much, but that has been helpful. And then this other therapy I do is somatic therapy. So it's getting trauma out of the body.
Yeah.
And like out of your energy system. And that has been super helpful. I've done some codependent anonymous meetings. I have been reading, my fiance and I have been reading this book, the 7 Principles by the Gottmans, which talks about like 7 principles for a healthy relationship.
Oh my God, I
so
love that you're
basically-
reading it together. Like, this is like you're starting things off right. I love this.
We really work on our relationship a lot. And also I did this like human design workshop that really helped with this.
Yeah.
So basically anything I can get my hands on to just calm my nervous system and like get back into my own experience instead of like hijacking other people's.
How does it look in the moment? Like, let's just say I'm spiraling right now and you can see me spiraling and you want to offer some advice for me to calm the F down. Like, what does it look like for you to sit? Like, do you have to be breathing, or are you able to like be listening, actively
I hold
listening?
my breath the whole time. No.
You're like, I do core work 1 and 2 and 3.
No, internally, I'm probably at this point freaking out a bit. Like my first notion is, oh my God, okay, they're going through it. I need to help. I need to figure out something. I need to figure out the right thing to say. I have to help them. I have to help them. And then after doing that for 1 to 2 minutes, probably, I'm like, okay, Lauren, just breathe. Like, your only job right now is to be present with what they're saying. You don't have to have like a script planned out for the perfect thing to share with them. Just like let your nervous system settle and try to actually be present. Because like when I'm thinking that, I'm actually not with you.
Yeah,
I'm detached from you.
Yeah.
Not present. And so I try to just then the rest of the time, like let you talk as long as you need to. Unless you're like actively asking me for advice, because then I'm in.
Yeah. Then you're like, how much time do we have?
And then at the end, if it seems like there's an opening and like you might want that, I might ask you, do you want my advice, or like what would be helpful right now? Even that's an even better question, because then you're not being like, I've got the perfect thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully they say yes. Because I feel like very few people are actually going to say no when you ask that, because it's clear you want to give your advice.
Yeah.
So it takes like a pretty strong person to even say no to, do you want my advice? So probably the best question that I should play with asking is, what would be most supportive to you right now?
Yeah. I'll be interested to hear how that works for you, because I feel like a lot of people are going to say, I don't know what I need right now.
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess then that gives you the opening to say, well, we could put on some music and we could dance to Stevie Nicks, or I have a couple of thoughts if you'd like to hear them, but no pressure. Like I think that opens the door for that follow-up if they don't know.
You could give them some options instead of just the one thing.
You know what I think is really interesting? So I host this other podcast, Dear Headspace, and they're all the time talking about like all these like, stop, like stop, take a breath, observe, proceed. Like they have all these like acronyms for things that you're supposed to do. And I never remember to do them until like 3 days later. And I'll be like, damn it, like why didn't I do the stop thing before I jammed that sundae in my mouth? And they always say you have to begin practicing it when you're not in crisis, so it will be available to you. Because I think as you're talking, like I'm recognizing that oftentimes I think I don't notice I'm doing it until I'm out the door, and I've already given you 3 bullet points of advice before I even recognize that I did it. So it's like figuring out ways to practice. Maybe it's just active listening, like and
I
to
think that's
sit.
true.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I think to calm ourselves in moments when we're actually not even in relationship, when we're just alone, that's a bingo for me. Because when you get with someone, you're like automatically, because of how I think I've been my whole life, and it seems like you too, we're automatically gonna be like, okay, then this, then this, and this, and this. Yeah. But it's going to be a lot easier to go there if we've been practicing. I mean, like, I guess it's the same thing as if you run regularly and then somebody asks you like, hey, do you want to do a 5K? You might be ready for it.
Yeah.
Because you've been running regularly.
But you don't start at the 5K.
Yeah. Everything requires practice and exercise.
Yeah.
And if we're not practiced at it, we're not going to get great at it the minute somebody is in crisis mode. So I think it comes down to calming your nervous system when you're not in a crisis.
I feel like it might be an interesting to experiment with just being like, in a regular conversation, just talking about where we should have dinner. I feel like I could practice just letting 3 people respond before I go, well, what do we want? Well, we had pizza last week. We have Mexican. Like, it's like I could practice being like, what do you think? Like building in space to wait. Because I sometimes feel like it just all moves so fast in my head. And I'm always saying to people, like, you can't even imagine how much I filter out. Like, this is filtered what comes out of my mouth.
Thank you.
Right?
I said that in therapy.
Right?
I go, I don't say everything I think for the record.
Like, but so it just all, I feel like it all moves really fast. Like, it's part of the reason why I was like, I should never and never have do cocaine, because I can't even imagine. I think I would just be like a whirling dervish, just being like,
it sounds terrifying to me. I'm like, if this is how I am on coffee, good God.
Everyone is scared of me on Coke Zeros. So,
That's the only Coke she needs, folks.
Exactly. And I don't need that either.
But I wanted to say one thing to your credit in that situation. I also think people can rely on you to play this role, to be the one that always has the answers, that can be the leader, that can step in and fix things. And so it's not all our fault, I would like to say for the record. Like, I think that there's so many things that play in that make it possible to be an unsolicited advice giver.
All right. So we do oftentimes talk about homework, and I'm going to make myself give, because obviously this is very personal for me as well. But like, what homework would you give yourself? Like, that's your next level of what you could work on for this.
Well, I think I haven't been doing the prep work you talked about, which is calming my nervous system when I'm not in one of those moments where I'm feeling like I have to deliver. Because, by the way, this comes up in my work too. You know, like if I'm coaching someone, it's like, if I can learn how to fully calm my nervous system and just like be present, I know I will be better everywhere and to everyone. And so I think my homework is doing that and continuing to delve into why this idea of being of service, and I'm putting that in quotes, got so wrapped up with my self-worth, where they're almost the same thing.
Yeah. I love that. All right. I'm going to steal your first one, and I'm going to practice once a day. I'm going to at least try for like 2 weeks. Let's see, 2 weeks. Once a day, I'm going to do one of those dumb stop, rain, whatever those acronyms are. I'm going to do one of those a day for 2 weeks. But I feel like there's more work for me to be doing. Like, I'm recently back in therapy because we did a whole episode of me telling on myself, because it really did come out of, I felt like a fraud for giving advice when I was like a mess. I was just like,
I listened to that one. That was an amazing
episode.
I was
messy. So I'm back there. I think there's more work to be done about being in the uncomfortable. Like, the drug thing really resonates with me. So I'm going to do a little journaling on that, because that's the side of it that's not the pretty side.
Right. That you're using like other people as your drug.
Well, yeah. Thing? Like you said, it's a little harsh. So it's not 100% right, but it's just like, true. But something comes up that's like, oh, I don't want to deal with my own shit. And yours is, this is real clean for me to get in there. And I think, especially having kids, it's really.
I want to ask you about that though, because aren't you supposed to give some unsolicited advice as a parent? Like, how do you deal with that as a parent? I'm not in that journey yet, so I don't know.
Well, it's like, you know, you do need to give advice to your kids, but there's a real awareness of when, like, I have to be really in my body, and I fuck it up so many times. Like, but I have to be in my body to see, am I moving them somewhere? Because I'm just worried about them and their future. Like, my daughter has just straight A's across the board. I mean, she's killing it, you know, in APs and taking all these extra things. And she wants to like give up her lunch to take another class. And I know. And she's like sitting with me on the couch. And she mentioned she had a little homework. And I was like pushing her to get up and go do it. And she straight A, like, she does her shit. I don't have to get in there and be like, did you do your math today? Like, she handles it. And she said to me, she was like, Mama, she was like, to a certain extent, she said, this is mine to handle. And she said, and you have to let me handle it. And I was just like, and I was so aware in that moment that what I wanted was her to do it so I could relax, so I could feel like everything was done. And so I have to just have a voice that comes up and goes, is this about them right now, or is this about you? But it's like, Lauren, the amount of times I fail is just astronomical.
Wow. That has to be like intensified times a million when it's your kid, because they're a literal part of you. But that was pretty confronting for me, what you just said. I think a lot of times the reason I do this is because I want to feel better. Like, we've been talking about it, but the way you just said it was like a new aha for me. Yeah,
it's not about them more often than not. I mean, there are many times when I need to like say to my son or my daughter, like, hey, like I do have this life experience and I am explaining to you, but then I have to, it's like constantly trying to find that line of, well, this is a lesson they have to learn on their own and what I'm willing to let them learn on their own. And every parent finds that line in a different place. So it's like finding that line is even more confusing when, as my therapist has been mentioning, that like a lot of what I'm looking at or doing is my trauma or my worries, and my kids
Right.
don't have those because I've done better than what was done for me. So they don't have a lot of the shit that I'm worried about, which is it's a
so
mind
good.
fuck though, because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, again,
You're
this
just
isn't
okay?
about. Oh, you don't have any money trauma. You're good. Like, okay, awesome.
What a beautiful I mean, like I can't think of any better reward for doing work on yourself than seeing that. Like that makes me want to cry that you didn't pass on the things that hurt you to your kids, that they know that that's yours to deal with. Like so many parents, I don't blame any of the parents in past generations. They didn't have as many tools as we have now. And many times they didn't have as many financial resources. There were a lot of things. But like the fact that you've done the hard work so that your kids know that your stuff isn't theirs to carry on, that to me is the biggest sign of success.
Yeah. Well, it's like one of those, like, you feel like a failure because it's like, if you could get it 50% of the time, that is a win. But in the moment, you're like, I think about the 50% of the times I didn't get it. But it's all I can do is try to clean it up. But I think that's what we're saying here, too, in general, is like we might have friendships or your relationship with your parents where it's set a certain way. And all we can do now is try to clean it up.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've said this to you about 1,000,001 times, and I'm going to say it 1,000,001 more times. I could talk to you for days about pretty much anything. I'm almost certain that there's no topic that we would be like, I don't have a lot to say about that.
Same here. You know what? I just had an idea for us.
Yes, give it.
We should have like an advice-a-thon with each other where we're just allowed to give as much advice to each other because I would trust your advice.
Oh my God, I love an advice-a-thon. I'm so down.
Just think of all the advice we have held in between now and then, just creating an empty space, an empty vessel of just wisdom to bring to you.
Oh my God, I love it. All right. Tell everyone in the Well-Adjusting family how they can listen to you and get all the Lauren LoGrasso that they need, which is a lot.
Well, I love your people, by the way. Some of them have come over to me because we've been doing the cross promo. So I just want to say, hi, sweet listener. I'm so happy to be in community with you. And you can come over and listen to Unleash Your Inner Creative. New episodes are out every Wednesday. It's everywhere you get good podcasts. I just put out a single, Genie in a Bottle. It's my cover of Christina Aguilera's classic.
Love it.
And I also do creative coaching. So if you're intrigued or interested by anything I said, if you want my solicited advice, feel free to reach out, lauren.lograsso@gmail.com, or you can get a hold of me at my website, laurenlograsso.com.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You are the best.
You are. Love you.
Love you,
appreciate
Mama.
you. And thank you for what you do. It's so important. And you're really, really good at it.
As are you.
You are great at
you
giving
are,
advice.
You are great. All right. So, Steph, you couldn't be here on this recording. Insert my crying emoji here. You were like, where were you, in Hawaii or some nonsense? Like, the truth of the matter is I almost never know where you are.
And you never will.
But you and I are two people who love to give lots of advice.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, what is the best advice that you ever gave someone?
Oh, Lord. Probably nothing. Maybe like some cooking advice or something. But on a more serious note, I have done or redone so many people's resumes or CVs or cover letters with them. So I don't know if that's like advice or like a workshop, but Of
course you turned it into a workshop.
Yeah, I was like, let's just do it together. But I think I have seen a lot of resumes and I'm good at formatting things visually. So I think that's probably my strongest suit. What about you?
I first of all, I feel like you've probably given better advice than that, but we're going to go with it. And that's valuable too, though. I mean, I have those kinds of things because I was like the head of the interns at my old job at MTV. And I think I helped a lot of people get their 401k started. And that was pretty good. But I think the best advice they ever gave was Mary and I used to do almost like a workshop. Like before I did my old podcast that was about LGBTQ family planning, we had this like talk. I would run the blender and do frozen drinks, and people would come over and then we would tell them how to make a baby. And it was like every lesbian we knew was coming over and being like, so, and I would walk them through their insurance, their carriers. I'd be like, here's the place where this is where you can save money here. And I had a whole spreadsheet, and it was the how to make a baby lesbian style.
I love that that's what we're calling it, because I'm sure that anyone that heard that you were making frozen drinks and then explaining how to make a baby probably didn't automatically go to lesbian style with all of the other things that you have to get in line. So incredible. What do you think is like the worst or disaster advice that you've given someone?
Oh, well, I mean, I did, hopefully she doesn't listen. I did tell my sister-in-law to like invest some money in the market, like right before the market like shifted. So that wasn't great. I'm going to kind of whisper that. And hopefully, Linda, I'm super sorry. I think it's turned around. My account has. I hope yours has, if you're listening. But I had one in college where there was somebody I went to high school with. Oh my God, I'm like whispering all of these because I feel like I'm going to get caught. But I told her that her boyfriend had cheated on her and that she should like leave him. Like cut to, they're like married with kids today. And like, so I don't know that I helped.
Okay. I mean, maybe.
I had to whisper all of these. I hope these people aren't listening.
Maybe they came back stronger because they figured out their infidelities and worked through them.
Well, and I don't even know if he really had cheated on her. It was like, it could have just been like high school gossip. It's like, who knows if I was even like right.
Wait, this is from high school? You remember this?
Yeah.
From high school?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I need to work on my memory. I think similarly, like it's weird because I don't feel like it was bad advice from me, but it was probably like bad advice for my friends. I've had like so many friends that have stayed in like definitely objectively bad relationships.
And when they ask you and you're like, yeah.
And I'm like,
leave them.
I don't usually I normally want to be more harsh with that. And I think when I was younger, I used to, but now that we're getting older, I've like sort of like backpedaled and I'm like, I don't necessarily think, but like you do you and I will support you regardless. And so in that way, it's like, I think it's good advice for like me and my relationship with my friends. But like, do I think that my friends also have wasted like years of their lives with terrible people? Yeah.
I love how neither one of us said any of the good advice we gave was on this podcast. Okay. I think that's more than enough advice for us for today. And we are going to try to stop giving unsolicited advice. And I want to thank Lauren for joining us today. Go listen to her podcast, Unleashing Your Inner Creative, and go stream her music. All the links are in the show notes, folks. For more Robin, and you may need that, you probably don't need it, but like if you do, you can follow me at Real Rob Hops on all the platforms, all the socials, as the kids today say. Well Adjusting is an Edit Audio original series. It's exec produced by Steph Colburn and Robin Hopkins. Our producer and editor is Maria Passingham, and our production manager is Kathleen Speckert. Thank you to the entire Edit Audio team and to you for listening. Oh, hey, before you take out those AirPods, this show is just for entertainment. If you are in need of help, please, please, please reach out to a professional. Go ahead and get that help. You deserve it.